Peace be upon you, and it's your host Fadila. Welcome back to Books and Coffee Season 2. How have you all been? I hope you've all been in the best of health and iman. Today, our guest and I will be diving into an important topic. We'll be diving into the world of knowledge acquisition through books, especially the Muslim youth.
So before you continue the episode, I would just love to say we are both not trying to put anybody down or claim to be perfect Muslims. We are just two Muslim youths sharing our knowledge with you and also trying to better ourselves as Muslims and as individuals. I hope you enjoy the episode.
Our guest for today's discussion is Adeel, popularly known as Halal Adeel on social media. Adeel, welcome to our Books and Coffee podcast. How are you? And how's the weather over there been?
Alhamdulillah. It's been kind of cold, It's been kind of cold over here. How about you? How's the weather over there?
Alhamdulillah, the weather has been good. It's currently raining, so yeah, Alhamdulillah. Let's begin with this question. Why do you believe the topic knowledge acquisition through books is important, especially for Muslim youth?
I think that the whole concept of reading and reflecting upon the book or on books is something that we as Muslims are, encouraged to do even from the start of Islam, right? Like when Angel Jibreel came down to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in the cave, and with their first interaction, he said, "Ikra bismi rabbik," read or recite in the name of your Lord. So at the end of the day, we as Muslims should be going to the books for knowledge as much as we can, sticking to the books of knowledge as much as we can. And one of the main books of knowledge that we should be reflecting on and going to, well, two of them actually, is the Qur'an and it is the Hadith. So we're encouraged to read even from the start.
I totally agree with you because as Muslims, it's advised that we gain knowledge to improve our deen and become better versions of ourselves. And also,
Yes, I agree.
In your view, what is the most significant role that books play in shaping the knowledge and understanding of Muslim youths? How important is it?
First off, we have to come to an understanding that the main book that we all should be reflecting upon and reading is we should be always going back to the Quran, right? So the Quran is a book that for us Muslims is very beneficial. The Quran is not only a book that gives us guidance, but it's also a book that it's a shifa, it's a cure for our soul and for our heart. Throughout the day we're sinning, we're doing wrong, or we're in a world that's full of sin, and the Quran is there to kind of cleanse that sin from our heart and keep us redirected on the path, the straight path, right? So as the youth, we should really be focusing on connecting with the Quran and trying to make it a daily habit of reading the Quran, understanding the words, and using the words that we're reading in our lifestyle and adopting these words in our lifestyle to become better people and also to be guided, right? So it's very important. We need to take upon reading from the Quran and pondering on the Quran. We need to put an importance on this if we truly want to be guided. I meet many people, many of the youth I've spoken to, even yesterday. He came up to me, he's like, "Yeah, Adil, I feel like, I'm sinning. I feel like I'm doing wrong, and I keep falling to the same sin, and I feel like, slowly and gradually, I'm starting to feel less guilty. Like I'm sinning, and over time, in the beginning when I first did the sin, I felt guilty, but over time, I feel less and less guilty." And I asked him, like, "How are your prayers? And do you read the Quran every day? Do you ponder on the Quran?" He's like, "No, I don't do it." I said, sinning and doing haram and doing actions which are damaging to your heart and soul, and it makes your heart and soul dirty, and it also makes your mind dirty too. It makes your mind dirty, makes your heart, your soul dirty. And Allah gave us the Quran and our prayers, but and specifically speaking, since it's about books, the Quran, He gave us the Quran as a way to kind of clean ourselves mentally, spiritually, and with our heart as well, right? It's like Allah gave us a way to take He gave us a way to wash our soul and our spirituality through a book by reading and reflecting on the verses, right? And we're not taking advantage of this. And the kid wasn't, reading the Quran. He wasn't pondering on it. He was avoiding the Quran. He last time he picked up the Quran was many years ago. It's very strange, right? Like imagine like you go and you like play in the dirt, or you go outside, you get dirty for days and days and days, and then like you have a shower at home, but you just never use that shower, and then you're like, oh, but I'm dirty and I don't know how to get undirty. It's like you have the shower, so use it, right? So the Quran is like that shower, right? As we sin, as we do haram, as our soul and heart and stuff gets blackened because of the world has so much negativity and so much, there's so much things that are kind of making us practice our deen. It kind of affects us trying to become better at our deen. It, pulls us away from Allah. This world has so many things that pulls us away from Allah. We have the Quran to kind of clean our heart, clean our soul, clean our mind, and direct us back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So reflecting on the Quran, truly opening up the book and learning what Allah has given us, and using this and implementing this into our lives is the best way to kind of increase our knowledge, clean our brain, clean our hearts and clean our soul and keep us on the straight path.
Yeah, I would love to touch a bit on what you said earlier, where you said the Quran serves as a form of healing, shifa. I
Mm.
totally agree because, non-Muslims, when they listen to the Quran, I don't know if you watch a couple of YouTube videos and then you see non-Muslims reacting to the recitation of the Quran, and they're like, oh my God, I have this feeling and I don't know how to explain it. So I feel the Quran is like a unique book. It's not like any fictional book or any non-fiction book. It's like uniquely designed by the Lord of the worlds. So yeah, I totally agree with all your points. So Adele, could you share a bit about your personal journey with the Quran or with books of fiqh and how they've shaped your knowledge as a Muslim youth?
So I think that the books that really shaped me, or as I was growing up as a Muslim, or especially these past few years when I really took it upon myself to increase my knowledge and go onto this path, is first, like we mentioned, the Quran 100%. But putting the Quran aside for now, you should always, even though you should always go back to it and always reflect on it and make it a daily practice. Um, the books that we should really be looking into is the Seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Before really diving into any kind of fiqh book, we should be picking up the book upon the Seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then also a book about Aqidah. But thing about going into a book about Aqidah or Creed or the Creed of Islam is that you want to make sure you're doing it with the guidance of a scholar so he can help explain things to you, because sometimes we can misinterpret some certain things, right? So like while I was growing up, I try to tackle Aqidah through my own lens by reading books and such, but it kind of confused me because the guidance of someone who understands the topic at the most wasn't there to guide me in the direction that I needed to be guided in regards to like knowledge that I was obtaining. Realistically speaking, besides the Quran, Aqidah and the Seerah are two main things that we should really be diving into as Muslims. The Aqidah, so we can be firm on our beliefs, because the Aqidah is something that a lot of the Muslims nowadays we refrain from learning about, and and it's not, and I don't blame them, because if you don't have the guidance of a sheikh, or if you don't have a guidance of someone of knowledge to help us guide us through these books, it can be very difficult for us to understand it. And sometimes we're scared to understand things that are complicated for us, so we kind of avoid it. So, find someone to help you guide you through the learning Aqidah. And if you don't have someone to guide you through these books, go online, find a good YouTube series. There's many good YouTube series with these books that can help guide you. So, in regards to Aqidah, there are really amazing books out there to help you understand your, Aqidah. And it's preferably it depends on your standpoint and your belief. So the best thing I would say in regards to like what book you want to learn about for Aqidah, it's to go to your local shayukh, or your local imam in the masajid that you go to, and ask them, okay, what is the best book I can start off with for Aqidah, and they'll definitely help you out with that. In regards to the Seerah, there's a Seerah book called the Sealed Nectar, which I read over and over again because I love it. It's a book that has, majority of it is has very strong hadith. And the thing is that a lot of Seerah books that you read, there are hadith, or there are mentionings or stories in these books that are kind of fabricated or weak. And as Muslims, we want to try to stay towards the most authentic stories. So when we're explaining these stories, we don't fall into mistake, or we don't fall into doubt, or it just, they're authentic. So the Sealed Nectar is one of the best books by far, that when I was younger, as I was going into this journey, it helped me a lot because when you read the Seerah, you get an understanding of the overall everything. You get the understanding of how there's a lot of just moral stories linked to the seerah. So you get like how your mannerisms should be in certain situations, or you get like stories of the companions around the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You get stories of how we should be worshiping Allah um from the examples of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You'll be hearing stories of how like he was in stress and he was in moments of anxiety, and how he turned to Allah in these moments. And there's stories that you will listen to in the Sirah it'll be an amazing guidance for you. And also it'll make you understand our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's life in a way that you haven't really seen it before, because if you feel more personal with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you feel like I'm getting to know him through this book. And the more you get to know him, you're like, man, this guy he was very relatable. Many of us think in Islam, because we're brought up by culture sometimes, that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam always kept a straight face and he had no emotions, and he was a very like a guy that was just like preaching Islam because he had all these miracles. But then when you listen to his story, you're like, man, this guy, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sacrificed so much for us, and he gave so much for us, and he was not just a man who had no emotion. He was smiling all the time. And but also there are times when he lost so much that we can't even imagine. And he gave us a solution on how to handle these problems if we ever face these kind of problems. If we face a loss, he's faced loss. If we face anxiety, he faced anxiety. If we're facing a hardship, he faced the most hardship. And so he shows us, okay, this is what he did during these hardships, and this is the du'as that he recited, and this is how he got himself back on his feet, inshallah ta'ala. I will use this as well, and I will also get back on my feet the way he did. And it also shows you how grateful you are to have Islam, because the way he when he preached Islam, how much he sacrificed for us. So when you look at it, you say, man, this one guy, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, sacrificed everything so we can have Islam. It just makes you feel much more grateful. And also the fiqh elements to it, while reading the Sirah, you can understand where certain aspects of like the prayer came along, when the prayer was established. So there's so much to the Sirah that like it's never ending. If you really want to really read a book, you want to read the Sirah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and then you want to read the Sirah of the companions of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because this Sirah will help guide you. It'll be an amazing guide next to the Quran. It'll also help you know how you can be practicing your Islam in the most cleanest way, in a way that the companions did it, in the way that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam did it. So it's just an amazing guidance overall. So Sirah and then the Aqidah or Aqidah books are the two main things the youth should be really tackling, in their journey of reading books and increasing their knowledge, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but also just also for the sake of increasing knowledge.
Like what you said about getting scholars while you're studying Akida, I was about recommending a book, and I was about to mention that the book is called The Devil's Deception by Ibn al-Jawzi.
No, Ibn al-Qayyim rahmatullah alayh.
When I checked it, I thought it was Ibn al-Jawzi.
Yeah, it's Ibn al-Qayyim. He has two. That's his name, Ibn al-Qayyim al-Jawzi rahmatullah alayh.
Oh, new knowledge. And new. This book, it could be like a bit confusing for people that do not have foundation for Islam. So I was about to say that exactly what you said, that when you're reading the book, it's recommended to read it with the guidance of a knowledgeable scholar in case you need some parts of the book to be interpreted, or you have questions that you want to be answered. And there's another book that I'm currently reading. It's the translation of the meaning of Sahih al-Bukhari. I'm currently reading volume 9. It's by Dr. Muhammad Muhsin Khan. So I feel it's a book everybody should read. It has, I don't know how many volumes it has, but it has tons of books in the collection. And I feel it's a book everyone should read.
If people are currently actually trying to get into Hadith, right? Sahih Bukhari, the translation of this, I would it depends on like what level you are at in regards to your deen. But for the youth, I recommend, if you are trying to start to read about ahadith and you really want to get an understanding of certain ahadith, especially the basics, right? And even this book has hadith that link back to Aqidah. So and also a little bit of aspects of fiqh, but one of the best books that anybody can read starting out in hadith is the 40 Ahadith by Imam Nawawi, right? This book is one of the best books to start off with, and it's a book that I'm pretty sure every single scholar of the deen always goes back and reflects on, because it's a book that has very important hadith, and also it's a very good introduction to understanding hadith. 40 Hadith by Imam Nawawi, it's just overall it's an amazing book. And of course you want to have a guide with you, but for the 40 Hadith by Imam Nawawi, there's so many commentaries on it that you can just pick up a book, maybe by Sheikh Fawzan, or another Sheikh. I read Imam Nawawi's 40 Hadith by Sheikh, by the commentary of Sheikh Fawzan. Honestly, this was one of the best, introductory hadith books for me. It made me understand, like, it goes over the hadith Jibril. It goes over the stages of life, when you're in the womb and when you're out of the womb and all that stuff. It talks about innovation. Honestly, there's so much in that the book, but it's only 40 hadith, but there's a lot to take out of it, and it's very easy to understand. So, like, before people jump into, like, Sahih Muslim or Sahih Bukhari, which you should always be jumping into because it's an authentic book. And if you really want to put your, like, you really want to, like, kind of just get a taste of hadith before jumping into the bigger books, like the big volume books, because they may be a little bit too big for you or they're too complicated. The best thing to do would be to jump into maybe like 40 hadith by Imam Nawawi. And this is what I think. So many people, like, when I first started, I asked someone of knowledge, what book should I look into when I start with hadith, and they asked me to go into some books like Al-Mufrad by Imam Bukhari rahmatullah alayhi, but then they said, oh, 40 hadith by Imam Nawawi. And when I started off with that book, everything else when going into hadith was like a little more easier because I had a basic understanding, and it was very, and these hadiths are repeated in many books of Aqidah and many books of fiqh, and there's these hadiths are in like Riyad al-Salihin. There's many hadiths that are like this, or it's like, for example, Imam Bukhari starts off with one of the hadiths that are in the 40 hadith by Imam Nawawi, but about the intention in the Ma'amalu Biniyat. It talks about this hadith in the beginning of Sahih Bukhari, and also in Riyad al-Salihin. 40 hadith by Imam Nawawi will get you really familiar with how hadith books are structured. I'm really familiar with some certain points of Aqidah. It'll get you really familiar with certain points of fiqh. It'll get you really introduced with certain points of ahadith, to get used to hadith and the grading of a hadith, and it will also explain the narration, who narrated it. It'll also explain like the commentary of, like, so because some people, when they read hadith for the first time, especially when they're increasing their knowledge reading these hadith books, they read a hadith and they say, oh, whatever the hadith says, this is what it means. But then sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes whenever there's a hadith that's being narrated, it might not be as broad as it seems. Like, you might read a hadith, for example, where the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that anytime you cook food over a fire, you have to do wudu, right? When you read this, you're like, okay, so that means it's a wajib. You have to do wudu when you cook food over a fire. But it's actually more deeper than that. There's a reason why he said this, but then he also dismissed it on multiple different occasions. So there's an overall understanding. A lot of the time, the youth nowadays, they read a hadith on Instagram, or two hadiths on Instagram, and they say, oh, this is what it means. Like, when they're reading a hadith, this is exactly what it means. So we should not be doing this thing because this is what the hadith exactly says. But sometimes there needs to be context to hadith. There needs to be a broader understanding. So this book, 40 Hadith by Imam Nawawi, really shows you that sometimes when you read a hadith, there is so much in that hadith that just reading it by itself would not be sufficient enough for you to understand it alone. That you need an outside person that has more knowledge on this topic to explain it. So he can also bring out outside hadith and other topics to kind of make the point of the hadith stand out stronger, and to make the understanding of it stand out in a way where it is very understandable and it's very easy to understand, and it's very beneficial to you, inshallah ta'ala.
What is your opinion? What do you think of people reading like different genre of books related to Islam, like maybe non-fictions, fictions, historical fictions?
We should try our best to stick to the books that show us evidence, the most evidences from the Quran or Sunnah. We should try our best, unless this book is like I know there's some sisters out there who like to write romance, halal romance, little novels and stuff, like non-fiction stuff. I mean, fiction stuff. Okay, go ahead. Or people like writing history books about certain Muslim rulers and stuff. Go ahead. This is if you're talking about this, then that's fine. But if it's about like people just picking up random books that, like, I know there's some books out there. I don't want to say any names on here, but there are some books on there out there that basically, it's an Islamic book and it's supposed to inspire you to like pray and stuff, but some of the things they say in these books they have no basis in Islam, and that's what's dangerous. So if you want to require knowledge about Islam, you should 100% stick to the books that you know give you the direct evidences that are authentically strong, and even not authentically, right, maybe a little bit weak, but that can refer back to the Quran or Sunnah. We should be reading books that refer back to the Quran or Sunnah, and the books that we should be reading from should be from people that are, very knowledgeable and have the credibility to be writing these books. Because then, if they're not credible and they're writing these books about Islam and all this stuff, and it's not being approved and they have no ijazah, they're just writing books and you're just reading these books, then you're going to affect the preservation of Islam. Because if they make a mistake and then you go off of their mistake and then you start preaching their mistake, it's going to affect Islam, entirely. So we should, and it's just something that's dangerous. We shouldn't be doing, right? So we want to be sticking to books that are very credible. But if it's in regards to entertainment, like for example, storybooks or like romance novels, Islamic romance novels and stuff, then as long as it's not like trying to make you learn about Islam, and it's just like it has like Muslim elements in it. Like for example, a prayer, like a character in your book was praying, and it talked about how he was praying and like and how he was making dua for like a sister that he was in love with. And this is fine. But if it's like if it's like a book about increasing knowledge in like Islam and how to increase knowledge, and it's not by someone that's credible, then I recommend you stay away from it.
What do you say, or what would you recommend people who do not like to read books? What would you recommend them to do, or who do not like to read Islamic books in general?
Honestly, I don't like reading either. I don't like reading, but I do it, right? But honestly speaking, like, when you love something so much, right? Like for example, when you're in love with a person, right? When you're in love with a man, or a man's in love with a woman, you would kind of go above and beyond to get to know that person. Like for example, if I loved a woman and I was in love with her and I wanted to marry her and stuff, and I would go above and beyond to get to know her. I would want to know everything about her. I want to know, her, I would know her life story, her everything. When she sends me paragraphs, I would read all those paragraphs. I will buy her gifts. I would do this. I would do that. So now we have Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you truly love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you will go above and beyond to show it, to get to know Him and to get to know His Islam that He brought forth to us. If you truly love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you would go above and beyond to get to know the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And even if that means reading his books and trying to understand his books, you would do it because you love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we're supposed to love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala more than any woman or man that we love. We're supposed to love them more than this. So honestly, I don't like reading. I don't like reading. Honestly, for me, memorizing the Quran is very hard. But right now, I'm doing hifz. I'm memorizing the Quran for the sake of Allah under a teacher. And honestly, it's been very rewarding because I'm doing it out of love for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And reading these books that I'm reading and going over these books, because I'm doing it for the sake of Allah and I love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want to get to know His religion and I love the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Honestly, it's like I don't like to read. I don't read any other books. Like if you see, I have a few books on my shelf. I don't read them. And I've tried reading. I wasn't proficient in reading in my, in my early school years, but because I love the deen, I just do it. And I also, but if that's still not your boat that you want to fly down and eventually you want to get to it, you still want to read, there are still amazing series out there of scholars going over these books or people of knowledge going over these books that you can just listen to, honestly. And that's also fun as well. But, if you love something, you can go above and beyond and you're going to show it.
And I also recommend audiobooks.
Is there audiobooks of like earlier
Audiobooks?
scholars? Is there audiobooks of earlier scholars? Like I don't know if there's audiobooks of like
I think there should be.
You think so? Oh, khair. I don't know that. If there isn't, send it to me, inshallah. I will take a. I think that'd be much more better for me to go over that as well while I'm driving or something to listen to. I don't know if there's
Probably.
audio
I never
books.
checked. I might check. I just recommended it.
Oh, okay, khair.
So our next question is, what are some of the benefits that young Muslims can gain by exploring a wide range of books, Islamic books?
The benefit would be, you know, getting the highest rank in Jannah, inshallah. Um, that's the main benefit, I guess, and also getting close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, It's like every single sentence you read from an Islamic book and every single verse of Quran that you read and you memorize, you get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like every single verse. So like this is the benefit, this is the mere benefit. At the end of the day, when we're acquiring knowledge in Islam, it shouldn't be for the intention to show off. It shouldn't be for the intention to like tell people, look, I have more knowledge than you. Or it shouldn't be the intention to like try to get married and stuff. I know maybe people like they increase their knowledge and they memorize the Quran and they do it just because it makes their like I guess it makes them more respected, and they do it with the intention of maybe finding a wife, or they do it with the intention of being well known in the community, or they do it for the intention to like get a lot of followers or do something. This is what they do, right? The only benefit we should be looking into these books is to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's about it, honestly. Because it is, if you're doing it for the sake of showing off, it is a form of shirk. It's a form of, it's not something that we should be doing, because imagine increasing your knowledge on all these things. You're reading the Quran, memorizing it. You're reading these books and you're memorizing these books and you're truly, learning about these books. And then imagine coming in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala shows you your scales of good deeds. And you think that on the scale of judgment, your scales of good deeds are going to be like millions and billions and billions. And then Allah opens up, the good deeds scale, and then you see there's nothing there. Because all this time you're learning and increasing your knowledge, and it's not for the sake of Allah, it's for the sake of Fatima, or it's the sake of the community. So do it for the sake of Allah. And the only benefit that is there is that you're going to be closer to Allah and you're going to feel it. You're going to feel good. And also on top of this, the worldly benefit is, you're going to have a guidance in your life. Like you're going to have a guidance that you know what to do, where to go, because Islam is just a guidance for you. You're going to feel contentment, the more you increase your knowledge in this world, you're going to feel content. And contentment is something that this world cannot offer. People have millions and billions and jillions and quadrillions of dollars, but they're not happy. People have the cars and some people have some men, they have like, in some countries they have like all the women, or some women, have all the men, or some, but they're not happy. Some people take, they eat all the food, they become, eating food, and they have all this thing, but they're not happy. Or maybe they're happy for a few seconds, but they're not content. Their heart is not content. That's why, a lot of this time, a lot of these people, when, like, for example, there's an actor recently, or not an actor, but there was somebody recently on the news. I'm not sure if he's an actor or not, but he was really rich, really well known, really wealthy, and he passed away due to suicide, right? And you're like, Allahu Akbar, like this guy had everything. Why, And this is very common. There's a lot of billionaires and millionaires out there that have everything, but they have everything, but then they end up committing suicide. Like, why are these people doing this? Like, they have everything? Shouldn't they be happy? Shouldn't they be content that they have everything in their life? No. Allah gives us something called contentment, where He gives us a book, He gives us a guidance that gives us the ability to be content in our lives, to give us calmness in our heart, and a guidance for us. So this is the biggest thing. Of course, there are people that will still have depression and anxiety, and these are mental disorders that they should go seek help with 100%. But Islam has the ability to make us content. If we don't have Islam, we won't have that contentment. Nothing in this world can give us the same contentment and the same, I wouldn't even say happiness, because happiness, honestly, it's very temporary. You can feel happy for a few hours and it can go away after one bad day. But Islam gives you that contentment where if you're having a good day, you feel content, you feel great, you feel grateful, you feel happy, you feel, I have everything that I need because I have my Islam. I woke up today, I'm able to pray my 5 times a day prayer, I'm able to read my Quran, I have Islam, alhamdulillah, I'm content. Before you're going to sleep at night, you're not really anxious. You don't have that anxiety like, oh, like, because you slept, you prayed, you did everything for the sake of Allah, you had to say the dua before you go to bed, go to sleep, you feel calm. People, when you read Quran before you go to sleep, that calmness you get in your heart, it's like, it's a feeling that you can't even describe, right? So like you go to sleep, you're calm. You wake up in the morning, you pray your salah, you feel calm, you feel content. You go out there, you feel calm, you feel content. You're reading the Quran, you're pondering, you're learning Islam, you feel content. And even if you go through a bad day, you still feel content. Why? Because you say, this is Allah's qadr, this is Allah's test upon me. And even through his test, you feel happy because, when Allah tests you, He gives you so much reward from it. So you're like, okay, I feel content. And then, when you're going through difficulties, you still feel content. Like, okay, I'm going through difficulty, but this is from Allah. And there's good out of this. And there's ease out of this. So you feel calm. So Islam gives us a contentment. Increasing your knowledge and knowing about this by reading the Quran and reading these books should give you contentment. And this is something that nothing in this world can offer you besides Islam.
So, like what you said earlier about people having all the money and still not being happy, it reminded me of a lecture by Muhammad Obulos. I don't know if I pronounced his name right. Anyways, he was talking about people having all the money, as you said, and not being contented. And it made me ponder for a bit, because a lot of people think happiness comes with money or riches, and you get what I mean. So yeah, I totally agree with everything you said. What advice would you give to young Muslims to help them choose reliable sources of books?
It's gonna be hard sometimes to find credible books when there's a range of books. There's a website called Dar PDFs that I use. It has free PDFs. I'm not sure if all the books on there are proper. That would give you a good guidance, but they're good books. That's a good start. Dar PDFs. Um, but honestly, the best thing to do is to go to your local masjid and just ask the imam. Or if not, then just the books will guide you, Like once you pick up a book, like for example, Imam Nawawi, rahmatullah alayhi, his book, the 40 Hadith, commentary by Sheikh Fawzan, and you look at Sheikh Fawzan, you're like, okay, this guy's a really knowledgeable scholar. Look for other books by Sheikh Fawzan. Or like for example, like if you follow a madhab like Hanafi, Maliki, Shafi, Hanbali, stick to your madhab. Learn about your madhab. People say, oh, we shouldn't be sticking to these madhabs. They're bad. They cause division. No, stick to them. These madhabs are not there to cause division. They're there to help you learn about the sunnah in the most efficient way. It's a guidance to help you learn about the sunnah in the most efficient way. So use these madhab. Learn like, okay, who are the most prominent scholars of my madhab, of the Hanafi madhab, and then read from their books and learn from their books. And inshallah ta'ala, you'll see yourself kind of guiding yourself. As long as you keep the intention of sticking close to the Quran and the Sunnah in the most authentic way, you'll do fine. Let's say there is a book that you pick up and it's misleading. But this book doesn't, but this book you see that it's not really directing you to the Quran or Sunnah. It's directing you towards like feelings, or it's saying, oh, this sheikh said this and this sheikh said that. Like instead of saying the Quran says this and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that, you kind of notice like, okay, this book is not directing me towards the Quran or Sunnah. It's just talking. It's just talking and referring to other shaykh. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this book aside, and I'm gonna see from the Quran and Sunnah if this matches. If it doesn't match, then I'm gonna just put this aside, and then I'm gonna ask someone of knowledge if this is a proper book, and then you just move on to a different book that that directs from the Quran or the Sunnah, because we should be taking from the Quran or Sunnah, and we should be getting books that explain the Quran or Sunnah, and these scholars that we should be taking from should be explaining from the Quran or Sunnah, and not just from their feelings and not just from what they think, right? So like I said, when you learn it when you start off slowly, you stick to Hanbali madhab, for example. You go to Hanbali madhab, you see, okay, there's a sheikh in this Hanbali madhab that goes over a book of or like let's say he refers this book of Seerah, the Sealed Nectar. Let me read the Sealed Nectar. You read the Sealed Nectar. Already in the Sealed Nectar, there's going to be like 4 or 5 different shaykh, names of the shaykh in this book, because they refer to different shaykh and their opinions on certain hadith. So then now you say, okay, now this book is good, and it's referring to these shaykh. So now let me look into these shaykh's lives, and then you go. But these shaykh should always refer back to the Quran or Sunnah. It should always talk about the Sunnah. It should always talk about the Quran. It should always talk about this. If the shaykh are not doing this, they're not referring to the Quran or Sunnah, as laymen, we should try our best to kind of like move away from it, because you don't want to fall into a mistake. You want to make sure you're referring back to the original source. Anything that is not referring back to the original source, we should try our best as laymen to kind of avoid it, so we get the most cleanest knowledge. And inshallah ta'ala, as you go forward in your journey of increasing your knowledge with these books, you'll kind of find your own filter, and you'll kind of find, okay, which shaykh are the ones that speak with the Quran and Sunnah, and which ones speak within just their own desire, or which one speaks about the Quran or Sunnah, and which one seems to have a little bit of controversy in it. Stick to the ones with the Quran or Sunnah. The ones with controversy, go to your shaykh. The ones with uncertainty, go to your shaykh and ask them about these books, and they'll guide you through these books. But the ones you're certain with, like for example, Imam Nawawi's book, which I already referenced like a bunch of times, this goes directly towards the Hadith, and it goes towards Quran verses. Sahih Muslim, same thing. The commentary that you talked about goes towards Hadith, and this, right? The Sealed Nectar, it goes towards Hadith and explanation of Quran verses. So just find things that refer back to the Quran or Sunnah 100%, and it makes sense. If the Prophet ﷺ didn't say it, if the companions, the most knowledgeable companions, didn't say it, and if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say it, and it didn't come from them, then do not follow it. Follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you to follow. Follow the Prophet ﷺ, and follow what the companions tell you to follow, inshallah ta'ala. So if the books are referring back to the companions and the Prophet ﷺ and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, these are books that you should stick with, at least for right now, inshallah. I hope I explained it the best way I could. I don't know how. I think so.
Yes, you did. So, what are some challenges you observe Muslim youth facing when it comes to reading and gaining knowledge, and how can they be overcome?
The only thing I see is that they're not humble. They read one Aqidah book and then they think they're a sheikh or a scholar. Or they have access to like YouTube and they watch a few series and now like, they start saying this person is this person is that. And this. So we want to kind of increase our knowledge with humility and being humble. We want to increase our knowledge with being for the sake of Allah. We want to do it we want to know our place. We want to know our place. Just because you read 2 books of Aqidah by yourself or watch maybe a few series doesn't mean you can go and start discrediting scholars because your book disagrees with them. Islam is it's full of so much knowledge and so many differences of opinions that honestly speaking, people, there's so much to it, that we need to be in our zone. We need to be humble. The more you increase your knowledge, the more humble you should be getting. If you find yourself increasing your knowledge and the more angry and the more cocky and arrogant you're getting, wallahi, this is from the shaitan. That means you're doing it and the shaitan is affecting you. If you're increasing your knowledge and you feel like you're getting more calm, you feel like you're getting more guided, you feel like you have more humility, your manners are getting better, then you're increasing your knowledge in the proper way. So when you go for these books of hadith, you're going for these books of aqidah and fiqh, do not do it for the sake to go and just like bash people and their opinions, and do it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do it because you're doing it for yourself, number one. And if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to guide people through your knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will show that to you, that your knowledge is benefiting others. And then even so, that doesn't give you the right to go at people and bash their beliefs, like everybody, that doesn't give you the ability to go and start discrediting scholars because you stay in your lane and be humble, do for the sake of Allah. Like for me, for example, right, alhamdulillah, I've been gaining my knowledge for the past about 4 years now, properly, through different schools and through understanding and reading and memorizing and, just different series and all this kind of stuff on my own. And Allah gave me the opportunity to like build a following and, guide people with my videos with His permission. And look at my videos. What do my videos do? Like, what are my videos? My videos are, guys, look at this really cool hadith and look at this really cool dua, and that's it. I don't make videos about this person is this or this person is that or this scholar is this or let me refute that or let me do this. I do it in a way where like, okay, let me stay in my zone. Even though I've been studying the deen for 4 years strongly, like I'm really dissecting the deen, and there are some times when I can come out and I can make points on certain subjects which I think I have enough knowledge to speak about. I still don't do it because there's so much to it, and just stay in your lane, be humble about it. Um, that's really it. Just be humble. That's the only challenge I see with the youth. That's the only thing. Everything else, I think this youth is beautiful. Because of the amount of access we have to different books and different resources, this ummah that's coming up right now, the youth of this ummah, wallahi, you're going to see the ummah be transformed into something that you have never seen before. This ummah knows that we're hurting. The youth knows that the Muslim ummah is hurting. They know that we are divided. They know that we are weak in knowledge. They know that these past 100 years we've been so focused on the dunya that we left the deen aside. And now I'm seeing the youth in numbers and numbers and numbers pick up the deen in a way that's from the Qur'an and Sunnah directly. No culture, no this, no just Islam, and they're falling in love with it at numbers that are at an alarming rate. I think it's very beautiful. I think the way they're doing, Allahu Akbar, we're gonna see the ummah be transformed again, and to at least in the next generation, and then the generation after, in a way that we haven't seen in the past 100 years. And inshallah, we're going to see this. And I think that the youth is doing a fantastic job. I think the youth is doing an amazing job. I see the youth just going really far, inshallah ta'ala, with this generation. But the only thing is be humble. Be humble with it. That's it.
Yes, I totally agree. From my own observation, I feel a lot of young Muslims, they tend to rely mostly on the internet. So I feel youth, because some young Muslims, you'd be like, oh, you should read this book. And they're like, oh, I have my phone, I have Instagram, I could just go through the. Truth be told is all this YouTube shots or maybe Instagram reels, they don't go in depth. They are just like surface level kind of knowledge. So I feel that's one challenge.
Yeah. You're right. There are some actually, it depends where you're looking. Honestly, I found that YouTube is a very good tool to increase your knowledge, independently. But through a sheikh is always 100% better. I've seen videos that even go in depth. Like honestly, I learned the science of hadith through just YouTube alone, which is weird like, and I'm still learning. Like, there's Sheikh Uthman ibn Farouk. He has an amazing series set up, like multiple series about science about hadith, and it really helps you from a beginner level to like maybe intermediate, and it really does help you. But it depends, I guess, where you're watching. But you still, like, at the end of the day, I still have guidance from Shaykh. Like, I still have guidance, like what is right, what is wrong. So like I still agree with what you're saying 100%. In regards to that. But the thing is that if anyone thinks that reading a review or reading a book, an Islamic book, one time is sufficient enough, this is completely wrong. The best of example we have is the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What did the companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam do? The companions of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when they would memorize the Quran, right? How long, it used to take them like 15, 20 years to memorize the entire Quran. We have people nowadays memorizing the entire Quran in 1 year. So how the heck did it take the Sahaba who had Iman a million times, larger than us? How come it took them 15, 20 years to memorize the Quran? Sometimes 10 years, sometimes even more. Because what they would do is that they would memorize like half of a page of, for example, they would memorize half a page of Quran. They'd memorize it. They would truly reflect on it. They'd memorize it, they'd truly reflect on it, they'd truly get to know every single meaning of it, and then they'll implement it into their lives. And once they implemented it into their lives 100%, then they'll move on to the next half of the page, or like the next page, or the next few pages. And that's how they did it. So it took them years to memorize. Now think about that. If this is how the Sahaba learned, they memorized it, they implemented it, and then they moved on to the next one, and it took them 15, 20 years, and that's from the Quran itself, then think about like these books that we're reading, right? Like, should we be reading one book and being like, we're done, that's it? No, we should be really like opening up these books, reading these few pages, reflecting on it, implementing it, learning about other opinions about it, dissecting these opinions, looking which ones are stronger, which ones weaker. Now, understand why these opinions are there, and then move on to the next section of the book. And then go and ask a scholar, what do these mean? Because sometimes when you're reading a book, your point of view is not sufficient enough. The scholar's point of view might be a point of view where it's something you just never even realized before. Like something that you read, but you just didn't pick it up. If the people are just reading reviews and these pages and stuff, this is not going to benefit you. This is them talking out of arrogance. They want to read, they want to get it over with. We should be reflecting on it. We should be implementing it in our lives. We should be pondering over it, and it should be only for our sake, and not rushing over it.
What would you say to inspire and motivate Muslim youth to start or continue their journey of acquiring knowledge through books?
Biggest tip would be just tackle the Quran, or ponder on the Quran, and this is going to inspire you. This is it. That's it. Honestly, that's it. That's the only advice. That's what worked for me. That's how it works for scholars. Truly connect with the Quran. The Quran is the heart of all the knowledge that you're going to obtain. And if your heart is not beating, then it's going to be very difficult for you to acquire these knowledge. So that's the biggest thing is the Quran, ponder on it, learn from it, and always go back to it and use it as that heartbeat. Use it as that fire that sparks up that inspiration to increase knowledge even more. If the Quran is not the center of it all, then your path to knowledge it's not a proper path to knowledge.
Thank you so much, Jazakallahu khairan, for sharing.
Yeah, may Allah bless you. Jazakallah khair for having me on.
So we encourage each of you to take a step towards enriching your knowledge through books, be it revisiting a classical text and most importantly the Quran, or exploring different Islamic books. Make a commitment to diversify your reading choices. Stay tuned for more engaging episodes in the future. Subscribe, rate, and follow us on your favorite podcast platform. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep growing. Assalamu alaikum. Oh yeah, I forgot. Before we go, could you say, and inshallah, I'll see you in Jannah? 3, 2, 1. Let's say it together. Inshallah, I'll see you in Jannah. Thank you so much for coming.
Of course,
Assalam.
Wa alaikum assalam.